Hello, welcome to Brain Spill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and like most scientists of our time, it's extremely important to be aware of our past and how to learn from it. Humans for hundreds and hundreds of years have learned how to cope with some of the world's deadliest infections and diseases, and how to learn next time as how best to avoid them. Over the past 100 years or so, humanity has come face to face with some of the worst infections and diseases known to man. Everybody's heard of the plague, the Black Death, SARS, but there's one incident in particular that not a lot of people might be aware of, called the corrupted blood incident. This is likely the most widespread, contagious and deadly infection ever to hit mankind. It was well and truly the end of the world of Warcraft. Yes, today we'll be talking about an epidemic that occurred in a video game which not only did it make national headlines back in 2005, but it still has ramifications up until this very day. And it's probably worth noting that I wrote the script to this episode prior to everything kicking off at the start of 2020, with that one thing I can't name due to YouTube demonetizing me, so we can all just assume we know what we're talking about here. For the 5 people who have no idea what the game World of Warcraft is, allow me to nerd out for the next 10 minutes and I will fully inform you as to what this is. World of Warcraft, otherwise known as WoW, is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game which was released back in 2004 by Blizzard Entertainment. To boil down an incredibly complicated story in the matter of a few sentences, essentially, the World of Warcraft is based in the world of Azeroth, and the mortal races of Azeroth are split largely into 2 factions, one being the Noble Alliance, and the other being the Honor-bearing Horde. So the Alliance and the Horde don't really like each other, and that's all you really need to know. The game largely revolves around crushing the skulls of any Alliance player. Sorry, I promised myself I'd be neutral in this video. Please, just bear with me, guys. The basic structure of the game is that you create a character, you adventure out into the big world, you complete quests, get new gear, and really just build your character and make it more and more powerful. That, and you can play with millions of people around the world, hence why it's a massively multiplayer online game. Like I said, the game was initially released back in 2004 and has been going strong since. Arguably. Fun fact, your boy Tank, he's been playing World of Warcraft since vanilla, on and off for most of the time the game has been playing. So I do have quite a good knowledge of the game and everything that's happened with it. That, in particular, with the corrupted blood incident, mainly because I witnessed it firsthand and I was playing the game when it first kicked off. Unlike most videos in this channel where I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, this in particular I have first-hand experience with, so you can trust me on this. On the 13th of September 2005, 1 year after the release of the original game, Blizzard released patch 1.7.0. This patch brought with it a whole host of new content, most notable of which was the new 20-man raid called Zul'Gurub. Still very salty I didn't get my Swiftzulian Tiger, but here we are. The raid itself was actually really fun. It was very unique for its time, and there was a lot of interesting mechanics for players to get their heads around. Apart from Mandakur the Bloodlord, because he can fuck off. The boss we do need to talk about, however, is this toothy grin man here, Hakkar the Soulflayer, who was the final boss of the Zul'Gurub raid instance. With a lot of the game's encounters, players had to be well coordinated and work together to overcome some of the most difficult mechanics that the bosses threw at them. One of the abilities used by the final boss, Hakkar the Soulflayer, was a debuff called Corrupted Blood. A debuff, otherwise known as a negative effect, would be applied to a player which would slowly start draining their health points. Now, the mechanic here is that if players stand within too close of a proximity of each other, the Corrupted Blood debuff can pass between fellow players, meaning that more and more people will start having their health points drained. Therefore, if players don't handle the Corrupted Blood correctly, it can very easily kill the entire party and they're gonna have to start the boss all over again. You know what? Come to think of it, social distancing could have been something we could have learned a long time ago. The trick here is that if a player gets the Corrupted Blood debuff, Provided they stay away from their allies for a 10-second duration, the debuff will disappear and they can carry on fighting as normal. That's all well and good, and that was Blizzard's original intention when they created this, for it to be just happening on this boss as a single mechanic for that fight. This Corrupted Blood ability was only meant to be used by Hakkar the Stoleflayer and to be contained within this raid, meaning that only players that ever reached this boss would ever have to tackle such an infection. For example, a player got the Corrupted Blood during the fight and then decided to leave the raid instance to go into the outside world. Blizzard intended for the ability to disappear, meaning that other players outside of the raid couldn't be affected by Corrupted Blood. Provided Blizzard did enough testing beforehand to make sure it was all okay. What I mean by that is that certain players can be different classes in the game, one of which is known as a hunter. One of the key traits of being a hunter is being able to have a combat pet with you. Although it seemed like Blizzard had done the testing for actual players, if a hunter had a pet in the fight that caught Corrupted Blood and then that pet was dismissed, it could be then brought back again in the real world at a later time, and for some strange reason, the pet didn't lose the Corrupted Blood. I think you can see where this might be going. In reality, players could effectively arm themselves with a biological weapon and take it out into the real world and cause some real chaos. So of course, if you were a player who had one of the pets with Corrupted Blood, where could you take it? Where could you cause the most amount of damage possible? Oh yeah, the capital cities, the most populated places in the entire game. The capital cities for both the Alliance and the Horde are naturally main focal points in the game because there's so many local amenities, places to meet up, and generally they are just big hubs of the world where many players meet at once. Perfect for releasing something so goddamn deadly upon the world. So the player would leave the raid, they'd make their way to their own capital city, and when in a very populated area, decided to resummon their pet. The pet would begin to succumb to the effects of Corrupted Blood and their health points would start being drained. But more critically, because they're in a very populated area, Corrupted Blood would start passing to other players. Suddenly, the Corrupted Blood would start jumping from player to player, many of which were either preoccupied, away from the game, or just simply dancing on the mailbox for some gold. Low-level players would die within a matter of seconds, many others dying slowly over time, not quite sure about what just happened. Within hours, cities across Azeroth were starting to turn into mass waves of skeletons, places where players had just died from the Corrupted Blood, and players started going into survival instinct mode. Some players tried to act as caregivers during this time, either healing or cleansing their allies where they could. Others, on the other hand, were being much more malicious and tried to go out of their way to try and infect as many people as possible. It was truly mad times. Me, on the other hand, I logged out of the game after a few hours because I literally kept dying and I couldn't do anything about it. The first outbreak was reported on the server of Archimonde in the Alliance capital city of Ironforge. And you better know that every single troll made their way to Zul'Gurub once they'd found out what had happened. I distinctly remember this happening on my server because I was stood in the auction house in Orgrimmar trying to flip Icecap when suddenly I died out of nowhere. And it was only when I checked the combat logs that I'd realised that I'd been killed within a matter of seconds by some unknown force called Corrupted Blood. And it did honestly take a while for people to catch on what was happening, and suffice to say, trade chat was going mad. You would have thought Corrupted Blood jumping between so many players so quickly and killing people that fast that the first wave of infections would just die out there and then. The problem was, however, that in some of the capital cities, some non-player characters or NPCs would be such high level, the effects of Corrupted Blood wouldn't outright kill them, due to the fact that they were such high level, meaning that these characters would stand in the cities and effectively act as carriers to keep spreading amongst new players that came into contact with these NPCs. Therefore, the cycle went on and on and on. And you have to remember, this is pre-Burning Crusade, meaning no flying mounts, normal mount speed, and at the time, many players didn't have epic mounts, let alone any mounts. meaning that escaping such a plague was not as easy as you might expect. Players were even working together to try and quarantine the infection and trying to prevent the spread as far as possible. Although capital cities were pretty much uninhabitable and people died over and over and over and over again, players were actually very receptive and very positive about what happened, assuming that this was a mechanic that Blizzard had put into the game on purpose to try and add some excitement and variation to the game. It wasn't. It was simply an oversight by the developers. Blizzard didn't initially know what had caused this, and they even had to take steps themselves to intervene to try and sort out what occurred. They even commented on the following incident and said this: "Even once we figured out what was going on, it made it really hard to fix. Our choices were either to go through every pet in every server in every country in the entire world and check if it had corrupted blood to get rid of it, or get really hacky code in where every time you summoned a pet, it would check to see if it had corrupted blood on it and get rid of it." Ladies and gentlemen, this is the definition of a complete shit show. After a month, yes, I'm going to repeat that again, after a month, Blizzard managed to figure out what to do and made sure that the corrupted blood debuff would not be able to appear outside of the Zul'Gurub instance. Although Blizzard had taken steps in order to try and prevent this from happening, some players were insistent on trying to keep the corruption spreading, meaning that Blizzard had really only one choice. They reset the servers and made sure that everything was back to normal, no corrupted blood in sight. You'd assume that this would be the end of this very strange phenomenon. Well, not quite. Not only did Blizzard take inspiration from this event in order to prepare for the pre-expansion launch of the second expansion, Wrath of the Lich King, but this also turned the heads of a lot of scientists. Yes, what happened in this video game allegedly has scientific merit and significance, primarily because of the way players reacted once the outbreak started. Ha! I told you, Mum! I told you I was doing something with my life. Anyway, essentially having a simulated plague was a really good way to gauge player reactions, how they immediately acted, and how people could learn from this in order to better prepare in the future. In an article in the Lancet Infectious Diseases Journal in 2007, said the incident raised the possibility for valuable scientific content to be gained from this unintentional game error, providing insight into real-world pandemics. Their behaviour may have actually extended the course of the epidemic and altered its dynamics, keeping infected individuals alive long enough for them to continue spreading the disease, and by becoming infected themselves and being highly contagious when they rushed to another area. Blizzard themselves didn't really engage with this and basically said, "It's just a game, bro." But really, I'm actually quite disappointed that they didn't decide to collaborate further with researchers about this, because they have the tools to do this, and I think it would have been super interesting to see if they could have expanded on this further and, maybe found out some very useful things. Not only could this have yielded some very interesting scientific results, but it also gives players another reason to troll their fellow players. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit that bell button. And if you've got any ideas as to what videos you'd like me to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. Right, well, I'm going to go argue with a hunter and say how it's clearly not a hunter weapon, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.